Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Thriving Together podcast, proudly brought to you by the Employment Services Unit at Saskatoon Open Door Society. My name is Paola, and I'm happy to be your co-host. Thank you for being there.
Yeah, thank you. And my name is Kenneth. It's my pleasure to be your co-host for today. This podcast is all about sharing the stories of newcomers and employer partners, stories of resilience, growth, and opportunity. Our goal is to shine a light on incredible journeys that inspires us all and to build a stronger connection with our clients, employer partners, and forge a stronger community.
Yes, and today we are excited to be joined by Reggie Ramlochan, who is born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago, beautiful place in the Caribbean. Let me tell you, not because I'm from the Dominican Republic, but you know, it's a beautiful place, all right? I have to say that. And also Reggie is an entrepreneurship advisor and certified coach for more than 15 years, actually, in different industries from energy and operations to entrepreneurship and also community development.
Yeah, and currently I believe Reggie is the Entrepreneurship Advisor at SK Startup Institute.
Yes.
And fun fact, you used to also be here as an employment counselor with the Saskatoon Open Door Society, where you led in programs like Skills for Work and with the Women's Business Hub.
Yes,
right?
so should we say welcome home, Reggie?
Welcome home.
Yes, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. I personally have heard so many great things about you, so I was very excited coming into this interview. And how are you doing today, Reggie?
Not too bad. Feels good to be home, like you said. Also, it feels good to contribute to something again with the Swords family. So, it's a wonderful experience, and thanks for having me.
Okay, our pleasure. Okay, so to kick things off, I have to question you about this. Can you briefly tell us a little bit about your background and also like about your path to work into employment counseling and now entrepreneurship? Like what led you to that area?
Yeah, so if we go all the way back to my career in Trinidad and Tobago, I worked for Shell. As a, I've come through various parts. So I started off as operations technician, and then I left as a surveillance and allocation analyst. So you can see there from that little expression is that I'm very flexible and adaptable, and I'm always seeking more. I always look for ways to give back. Hence the reason why I'm here. So I started off as a youth business mentor in Trinidad and Tobago. Luckily for me, we have Youth Business International, and in 2020, I won the Mentor of the Year award. So our little island, came over 50-something plus countries around the world. So I always had a passion for helping entrepreneurs and just giving back. That flexibility is what actually brought me to Canada. So flexibility breeds skill sets. It breeds particular mindsets, I would say, that you need to cultivate to be flexible. So those two things go hand in hand. Now, coming to Canada, I know that it's an entirely different terrain, so I had to basically back my transferable skills. So I leaned heavily on my coaching when I applied for the role here at SODS. And coming into SODS, resume writing, CV construction, just general consulting and so on. I lent very heavily to my coaching because I learned to listen, I learned to be present, and I learned to not discount the person that's in front of me. So given those opportunities, being sort of risk-seeking and a problem solver, maneuvering through different programs, I landed at WBH as the e-commerce coordinator and the employer counselor for the NEED program. And that's where I really got my first taste of entrepreneurship here in Canada. Wanting to do more, wanting to share more, wanting to not only help with resumes and cover letters, but put my hands in a different section of the Canadian immigrant community to help.
Awesome.
Yes.
And that's where I actually then saw the opportunity at SAS Startup, or some people know it as Shrida. And that's why I applied and I got the position. And now I'm there full-time helping, not only entrepreneurs of immigrant status, but also Canadian status as well. So we serve all of Saskatchewan at all levels of industry and all levels of startup.
Interesting.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I know I want to ask a question, but you've sort of like shed light into it already. But we all know the first question every immigrant gets asked is, when you came over, you faced challenges. How did you overcome it?
Yeah, so let me tell you something about being an immigrant here or to any new country. Don't wait till you come to the country to start making your plans. start planning from home. It's not going to be 100%, but start that preparation from home. Mainly because it's going to be a whole new ball game when you get here.
True.
There's a big difference to what people choose to put out as content and information on the internet, and there's a big difference between your lived experience in that space. So what I would have to say is that, how I overcame that is doing my very best to plan at home, coming here, executing whatever I had planned, and just leaving the rest to faith. And one thing I learned through that whole process was, don't take things personal, because it often isn't, right? You're not that important.
Yes.
Like, so don't be a narcissist to yourself. Like, it's not that important. It's just simply adopting a mindset of, this did not work. Let's try something different. Or let's try somewhere else. But it's not a question of, this is failure, you are a failure. Don't ever interpret things like that. Life is too broad, too dynamic, and too spectacular for you to limit yourself to just that one statement.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I say, plan from home, give it your best shot. Come here, execute based on your plans, and be flexible.
Be flexible,
Be adaptable. It's very different. You could have a 50-page plan that you write down, and you come here and you have to throw it out, because the lifestyle, the environment, the culture, the way of being here is completely different. Right?
Yeah.
So that's very important.
Very useful. And I hope everybody's taking notes at home, right?
Yeah, me too.
So let me ask you this. While working for Open Door Society as an employment counselor specifically, what would you say were the 3 top mistakes that you saw newcomers make when looking for jobs here in Saskatoon?
Yeah, one of the things I always said in every one of my online meetings with them is that you're not starting over. We come with the mindset that we've left home, we're in a new place, we need to start learning from scratch. You came here because you have a particular set of skills, a certain level of experience, and something to offer the work environment, the industry, that the Canadian government saw and they granted you that option. Don't take that lightly. So the first thing I would say is, don't believe that you are starting from zero, right? I know your credit score and everything starts from zero, but that doesn't mean that you start from zero. You are a seasoned professional, and as such, you should hold on to that, right? So the first thing is, just believe that you have inherent value that you have accumulated that you could offer to any employer here, right? The second thing I would say is, I guess we probably spoke about it a little bit more earlier, it's being inflexible. Right? What worked at home does not necessarily translate to success in
That's
Canada.
very important.
Yeah, so you simple things like making some tweaks in your resume, making some tweaks in your cover letters. Like sometimes when I'm having conversations, people will outright say, you know what, I was at home. This is how we do it at home. And this worked for me at home. I left at this level.
But this is not home, right?
But this is not home, right? It's your new home, but you have to understand that you have to play in the environment that you're in.
Exactly.
If you don't play in the environment that you're in, you're not going to have fun. So that's what I tell them very simply. I'm like, I understand that. And that is valid what you're saying. But you have a choice to make, because it's you against the world, essentially. This is the way things are done here. Do you want to hold on to old traditions and remain outside of the workforce?
But you want to adapt.
Or do you want to just not necessarily concede? We're not asking you to let go of your values. We're asking you to change the format on a document. Think about what I just said.
Strategically.
Change the format on a document. Is it really worth you holding on to that old paradigm of what you've been doing? So it's basically, again, just to summarize, plan from home. The second one is, be flexible. And the third thing I would say is definitely networking.
So that was one mistake. They were not able, or they were not wanting to do the networking required for succeeding, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say networking is a huge part of it.
People are scared of networking. I personally don't like it, but I know it's necessary in order to thrive, right? Like everywhere you go. So yes.
Yeah. So networking, and you learn a lot about yourself when you're an immigrant, or when you migrate, as you call it, because you have to stretch your boundaries a little bit. If you're an introvert, then you need to learn how to maximize your introversion in an exposed space. We know you're going to have limits, but then you're going to have to be very strategic. You're going to have to be hyper aware, and you're going to have to be very, very clear about what it is you're going to these events for. Because you'd only have so much time before you start losing your energy and you need to go home. So you learn these things about yourself. And those are just three of the main things that I see and I think I've experienced that sort of hold us, new immigrants back when we come to Canada. Not only just Saskatchewan, but just Canada in general.
I agree with that.
Just to follow up on the question Paula asked you earlier, when it comes to jobs, right, and finding new opportunities, for some people, you're lucky, you get opportunity faster. For some people, it takes a while.
Yes.
So it could be like 8 months and you're giving it all your God, you're just praying. So what happens while you keep going and you get exhausted? So do you have any advice in terms of...
Get burnout,
discouragement? How do you keep yourself motivated and keep going?
Yeah, so again, having a technical background is fair. Planning is always at the forefront.
Yeah.
You have to treat job hunting as a job. Meaning, all the way you would create folders and files and documents and keep things in check on your computer is the very same way you need to track the jobs that you've applied for. If you just keep sending out resumes and you don't necessarily have a record of what it is, the worst thing you could do is someone invites you for an interview and you go, yeah, what job is this? What role is this for again? I can't remember. I applied to so many. I'm not quite sure. Like, that's the worst thing you could do, right? Because you're making the employer feel as if they're just
and it happens.
And it
a
happens,
lot.
right? I mean, it's no fault of yours. I mean, you're trying to land a job, right?
Yeah.
So what I would have to say is the first thing is you have to track your jobs, right? I always tell clients when you apply for a job, first thing you do, you copy the job description, you make a copy of it, you put it as they have it on the advertisement.
Yes.
Right? That's very important because when that job posting expires, you won't always be able to retrieve it.
Yeah.
So if you get a call a month, 2 months down the road, you're going to need something to reference to know exactly how to prepare yourself for that interview.
Yeah, true.
Absolutely.
Right? So apart from that, I would say there's nothing wrong with you wanting to have a job or recreate the life that you had back in your home country. So you can apply for those high-level jobs, that's fine. But you're also going to have to create what we call a low, medium, and high tiers. So you might need some survival jobs. Look at those, apply for them. Medium, high. And give yourself some grace. Don't sit behind a computer 10, 12 hours a day applying for jobs. Right? Give yourself some time so that you could create a proper application when you're applying for these jobs.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes it gets desperate. I don't have any authority to tell people, how you should and should not spend your finances.
Yeah.
Only you know what that feels like because only you have your bank account in front of you.
Yeah.
But jobs will come.
Yeah.
Right? But you have to have a plan, not only with just the application, but like we spoke of, how am I building my personal self? How am I building resilience, right? Am I getting involved in community activities that take my stress away?
Yes.
Right? Am I going to networking events that make sense, right? Right? And am I, falling back on the plan that I had from my home country, right? So all these things are as a holistic point of view when you're approaching the job market.
Okay.
Right? You need a support system. Try and find your tribe. I know that's not a word we want to use, but try and find, your countrymen, right? Or women, as the case might be, right? I'm just saying. And don't be afraid to ask. Don't be so proud. Just be like, hey, I'm a new immigrant.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have particular skill sets in this particular areas, but I'm open to, lower tier jobs is what we would look at it as. And be open to doing that. Just get your foot in the door. That's all you need, right?
Absolutely.
Just get your foot in the door, and your life will take off from there.
So what is your opinion when it comes to a new immigrant coming to the country? Should they first, go look for employment, or should they start a business, or does having a Canadian working experience help you in a long-term vision of owning a business?
Yeah, wow, that's how much time do we have? I answer that, and being an immigrant myself, I answer that it all depends on what your personal situation and profile is.
Okay.
If you are coming from a position where you don't have the money to invest in a business, or you're seeking immediate financial stability, it's probably in your best interest to start looking for a job.
Okay.
Right? Because it doesn't make sense. It takes time to build a business. That's the fact. Right? You could have a great product or service, but just because you have a great product or service doesn't mean the market is aware of that. And that takes time because you have to now let people know about it and then do sales and then create that. And it's a perpetual shift that keeps going on.
Yeah.
So it takes time to build that. So it's based on the individual and where they are. There are some people who come here they have a pretty sound financial baseline. They could afford to start a business. So if that's the case and that's your profile, then go for it, right? If you need financial stability, meaning you need something to pay bills, to pay rent, to buy groceries, to pay for your phone, I would recommend you go the employment path.
Okay.
How those two worlds collide is essentially you now taking a look at how much of my free time am I willing to give to build this business? And that would then determine how quickly you move through the pieces of it. So for me to answer that question, there's no one standardized general approach. I would say each individual has to do a bit of self-assessment and kind of determine, their risk level. Like, am I risk averse? Am I risk seeking? Am I, both? It's all based. It's a lot of factors. Like someone with a family is going to have a lot less time as compared to someone who's single and in
Good
this country.
point. Yes.
Right. So
you have mouth to feed, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And then yours as well. So again, it's I know it's not the answer that gives clear guidance, but it starts with you looking at where am I, what can I endure,
looking at the basics.
and what do I wish to start.
Yeah, true.
Right? And just because you can't start it now doesn't mean you can't do it later.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong way. If you are risk averse and you wish to go after your business, then do that.
Yes.
If you're not and you need some stability and you prefer to work, then go for that. As far as Canadian experience is, it has its place. For a wide overview for me, Canadian experience means your ability to assimilate into a culture and contribute in a way that doesn't upset what was already built. So if you could do that, as you pursue these things in your life, it's going to be very, very helpful for you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
So for example, you have to know the very dialects of speech. You have to be willing to understand that being polite, tonality, body posture, positions, gestures, verbal, non-verbal communication, all these things add to it, right? So it's more than just, trying to be polite.
Yeah.
It's more than that. It's a whole being that has to come behind this.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would say in
Yes.
terms of Canadian experience. If you could get that, it's not that you need that to start, but if you could actively pursue that and understand where you are in that hierarchy in terms of getting from where I am to where I ought to be, it works in your favor. Because when people begin to know you, they'll understand, okay, well, Reggie's a little more aggressive, but he doesn't mean anything. It's just probably the way he is. And then they'll know, they'll start seeing you making the changes when you learn to, maybe just temper it down a little, try something a little different.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's like different for everyone, right? Like, because every case is unique. So you have to be honest with yourself and see, like, according to your reality and your resources as well, like what is most convenient, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And while we're still on topic on, thinking and taking time to research, when it comes to, doing a business or going for employment, there's some certain temperament, certain emotional tendencies that are needed, right? And when people think about flexibility or stability, what is like your go-to advice when people are wondering about like, oh, I want to either do a business or, climb the career ladder, but I'm also thinking about flexibility and stability. Like, how important are those?
I would say for that, if you're truly passionate about starting your own business, make sure you could eat 3 square meals a day and pay your rent. Because let me tell you what happens with that, right? You become desperate. And when you start doing business with people, they start seeing it. So normally when you would conduct a sales call, you might be a little more forceful trying to get the sales. Sometimes that's a little off-putting for people, right? Or sometimes you might come on a little too strong, trying to show people how great your product or your business is. And then quite naturally, if you're in Canada, unless you don't have a support base that you could stay somewhere else for a period of time until you get back on your feet, you're on your own. So I would always say it's like, again, it's based on the individual. If you have a lot of savings or you have a good financial, foundation, then by all means, please.
What's your roadmap?
What's your roadmap? And what are those KPIs, those key performance indicators? What are those signals? What are those checkpoints that you are saying, I am on my way to leaving this job.
Yeah.
And then when you leave your job, do you have a plan of how you're going to invest yourself holistically into your business? Right? Because remember, you're doing this part-time. So while you think you might be running a business full-time, it might not always be the case.
So how can someone transition from being employed to self-employed and maybe like entrepreneurially minded? Like, say, for example, Kenny, I know he has some good business ideas, right? And that he wants to explore eventually. But should he say like, sayonara everybody, like I'm out tomorrow and just like start his business? Like, what things does he has to have in mind before taking that big step?
Yeah, I once had a client came to me with that. He was like, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to go after this full time, and I'm going to make $1 million in a year. And I was like, hold on, Trinidad, hold on for a while. Let's just take a pause. Let's just take a sip of water and let's sit down, right?
Yeah.
Calm down.
Yeah, let's calm down. I have a couple questions I'd like to ask. And when we start asking questions about, who is your market? What's the size of your market? Who's your ideal client? How are you going to market to them? Are there specific demographics within your market? Meaning, the way you market to a teenager is different to how you're going to market to a C-suite executive.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to do TikTok dances for a C-suite executive, right?
Some people could, though.
Well, I mean,
but no, that's not for everybody, okay?
Yeah, but I mean, if you're providing a professional consultation, it's probably not the best. But yeah, basically, I'm just letting them know, like, when you get emotionally invested, logic kind of leaves the room. And what we need is a balance of both. Because emotion could take you places that logic can't necessarily recover you from. So we need a little balance of approach. And again, business planning, asking these questions, right? So to come back to the question of, if you are thinking about starting a business, this is where we actually give you some advice on how you could start a business.
Yeah.
So what people don't know is that they think if I have to have a business, I have to have a registered business. That is valid. But there's also a little space that they carve out here that you could use what we call self-employed, meaning that you trade under your first and last legal name, no variation to it. So if my name is Reggie Ramlochan, that's what I'm using, right? I'm not giving any product, no, not Reggie Ramlochan Consulting. Consulting is not my legal name, right? Most people start here, basically at home, just to test the market, kind of see what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And then if you decide that this is going to be something viable, or you decide, again, the key word here, you decide that you want to make something out of this, then we take you to like the various business structures and so on, like sole proprietor.
So, So, but while we're still on the topic of making billions here, with your experience,
you
and
like
work,
that topic? Eh?
Who doesn't like money? With your experience at SK's Startup Institute, and just like your experience in general, right? What are some of the opportunities or sectors that are growing really fast, or favorable to newcomers or entrepreneurs in Saskatchewan? Yeah,
so mining is definitely a big one. Manufacturing, the agri space, oil and gas is also taking up. Tech is also a good space as well. Clients sometimes come and ask, tell me where to start a business, and I'm like, here in Saskatchewan, start it here. Okay, so what kind of business should I start? Well, that's where you need to start having the conversation. This is where you take the lead. Just because you start a business in a successful industry doesn't mean you would be successful.
Yeah.
Right? Who you are, how much passion you have, how much resilience you have, and how much you want this business to be a success is what's going to be the driving factor for your business. Okay. Yes, you have to be strategic and all of that, but what's going to give you the impulse to seek out these areas, right? So that's what I'm saying is like there are quite a few areas that are up and coming, right? But it really comes down to what is something you could wake up and do every single day, right? Some people don't have a particular passion per se, but meaning that they're not into hair and nails, they're not into app development, but they love business, right? These people normally are what we call serial entrepreneurs, right? They build businesses. That's what they love. And there's some people who love actually doing something. We recently sat down with Jeremy Lang, who is you probably know that name if you saw it anywhere in the agri space. And he said he learned that there's two types of entrepreneurs. There's the inventor type and there's the sales type. Yeah. So which one are you? There's some people who love selling and there's some people who love creating.
Yeah, making.
Right? So it's kind of like, find which one are you and lean into that very strongly.
Okay, wow, that's interesting. Okay, and I have a question now for Coach Reggie, okay? I want to hear your mind here. How important, Reggie, do you think mindset is? Like resilience, growth, like all these like core things in both like job search and entrepreneurship. How important that is?
It is the driving force. It is the nucleus. It is the essence of everything. Because what I always, let clients know is that you hear this term, you wear many hats, but you don't finish the term by saying it's going on the same head.
Yeah.
Right? So you're still the same person, which means if you don't have patience as an employee, you won't have patience as a business owner. So building resilience, being strategic minded, kind of getting all that grounding of who you are and what you're capable of doing, and being a little bit aware of what your vulnerabilities are is very important, because it will fail you in all aspects of your life. These are not mutually exclusive areas. There's you experiencing life in various facets. So building resilience, knowing who you are, I would always say the best bit of search you could actually do is the search for yourself. Right? Look at self-awareness and see what are the areas that I am vulnerable in, and how is this going to affect me, and where do I get resources to get that help? Because if you're going after a job search and you get frustrated by failure very quickly, you're not going to have a job. Highly likely. And then I have a friend. I would send him job vacancies, and he would say, "No, they have their people already." You need to get that
mindset.
You see what that does? It brings down your enthusiasm level.
Yes.
And that will be manifested in your cover letter and resume, because you think you've already failed at something you haven't even tried at.
It's like you're disqualifying yourself before they do.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? And then you're not even quite sure. That's your opinion. You don't even know if they have someone there or they're genuinely looking. Regardless of what it is. That's why I said at the beginning, don't take things personally. Right? You should be glad. I've had quite a few interviews here that I've failed, and I've always took it to the point of saying, you know what? This has nothing to do with me. I'm still who I am. I just wasn't the candidate they were looking for.
Yeah.
And if they select the right candidate, and that candidate could grow this organization, guess what? That leaves the door open for me when they have more vacancies coming out. So you have to look at this from another perspective of me, but trying to look from a perspective of we. How me as a person, or I as a person not getting in there, is going to affect the organization. Because the worst thing you could do is be the wrong hire.
Absolutely.
True. And on the topic of failure, right? From a different perspective, it could be like you're sitting on a gold mine, because you get to work in this organization where you see a lot of people fail, right? And you see a lot of people succeed. And you know what the advice is, learn from the failures of others. But you also have a responsibility of motivating them further. So looking back at your experience in terms of rejections you received or personal failures you've had along your journey, and also looking at the experience from work, seeing other people make attempts and sort of like fail or achieve, what are some of the advices you give to yourself to like move on and just support the movement? And what are some advices you give to people you're helping in your career in terms of like, hey, plan A didn't work, but remember you still have B, C, Z, right?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is don't fight failure, and don't fight the feeling of failure. Just like grief, it's something you need to go through. So if you feel disappointed, that's okay, that's valid.
Yeah.
Right? You went after something that you deemed was important. It didn't work out. It didn't meet your expectations. It's natural to feel disappointed.
Yeah.
Right? But again, take that disappointment, live it through, and just let it dissolve. And just try to create a whole new horizon, because every single decision you make is a new start. Right? So that's why I always let clients know, it's like, things might fail. You might, it might affect you in a very, very intimate and also elaborate way.
Yeah.
But the whole thing about it is failure is only fatal when you say no to starting a new option. Right? So as long as you can say, yes, I wish to go again, you don't have it. It's kind of like games, right? That's why people, like psychologists would tell you, play therapy is a really, really big thing. Because human beings, as we grow older, we get more serious and we lose the love of play. If you look at a child playing, even if they have like the little PS5 or whatever, they lose a game, they're like, oh my God, start. So that's it. They don't take it personal and lay down on the couch and go, Mom, call the doctor. You know, it's not like that. It's like, now I learned something. That guy's hiding behind there. So now I know what to do, right? That's how you should approach life as well. And I know as adults, we have a lot of things to lose. I know that. But if you take things too seriously, it will impact you in a way that is hyperinflated, right? Failure, something didn't work, you lose money, stuff like that. I understand that is a big deal. But if you give yourself another chance to move forward, like for example, look at all these successful people. Nobody talks about their failures. They don't focus on the success. You have no idea how many scars they have behind them from failures. So I would always say, be kind with yourself. Go through the feelings and the emotions of disappointment, but know that the power to start a second time is always there. You always have a second chance, as long as you say yes to a second chance.
Putting yourself out there, as you said, like that could be scary. I mean, and giving you the opportunity to fail as well, because we all going to fail at some point, right? As long as you learn from that and then recover and do better. But talking about like scary stuff, let me tell you about networking. I told you before, I hate I mean, I don't prefer networking because I'm sort of an introverted person. But I do, you do now. You feel me. But we do know how important that is. And we have to, you know, come out of our cocoon and do whatever we have to do because it's necessary for us to thrive in this community. But for people listening to this episode, and both for job seekers and entrepreneurs, how important do you think, would you like to tell them networking is?
Well, networking, like they say, network is your net worth, right? It's actually quite true because people will either promote you or demote you in rooms that you haven't stepped foot in. So when you begin to network, you begin to expand opportunities. Networking essentially equates opportunities.
Absolutely.
Right? So some of the things that would actually benefit someone who isn't necessarily a pro in networking. One of the things that worked for me was when I realized that anytime you go into a networking event and you sort of get anxious, or your anxiety level goes up, it means that you are focused on you. How am I looking? How am I sounding? What can I offer? If you turn that outward and consider to come from a place of service, meaning how can I help you?
Wow.
Right? It changes the dynamics of how you look at a networking event.
That's a game changer.
Yeah, because you see, we are very self-conscious human beings, right? From a primal level, that's just a mechanism to keep us safe. Safety doesn't always mean someone has a gun or some bear in the woods is running you down, right? Safety is simply those things that activate us in a way that we're being stretched beyond our normal ways of being, right? So when you go into a networking event, you know, it's very easy for you to be self-conscious because, you know, oh, who am I? You know, what are these people doing here? They're accomplished. Like, what could I offer? You know, stuff like that. You start thinking that way. And that's quite natural because you want to be a contributor.
Right.
It doesn't make you bad. You just want to be a contributor. You want to be able to offer something.
True.
But it's just that you're doing it through the lens of me. And if you do it through the lens of someone else and you come from a place of service, it's actually easier to have that conversation. It doesn't mean that you become a guru, but you become a little more comfortable with saying, hey, Paola, how's things? You know, it's nice to see you. Or, you know what?
Is that your icebreaker? Is
That's
that your go-to?
Yeah,
okay.
That's my go-to. Yeah, that's my
just, hey, how are you?
We're going to steal something.
I mean, it's very simple, right? Like, go with something that you know. Don't start, so what do you think the industry is going to do in 15 years? Do you think it's going to grow? That's not what you start with, right?
It's minus 40
No,
today.
you start with the things that you know. You could say your name.
Yeah.
Yes.
You could say hello.
Yeah.
Like you could say, hi, my name is Reggie. This is my first time here. Have you ever been here before?
Yeah.
Try to get curious. Try to be of service. Try to understand. You're not trying to like sell anything.
Yeah.
Right? You're just trying to be curious to like get to know people and be like, hey, my name is Reggie. This is my first time here. Have you ever been here before?
Yeah.
Is there anything I could look out for? Things like that. Or just simply, hi, my name is Reggie, and I'm an executive and leadership coach. I work with values and identity.
Like, hey, my name is Paola. I like your glasses.
Exactly.
Hey, cool glasses.
Simple.
That's it.
Or if you're someone who that can't work for you on the fly, then prepare something.
Yeah, prepare in
right?
advance.
Like, ask some questions that would be relevant to that space.
Yeah.
Like just simply go in and say, hi, my name is Reggie. I just landed in Saskatoon. I'm a new immigrant. I'm happy to be here. Do you recommend anything else outside of here? I know the night just started.
Awesome, yeah.
Is there any other events that you think I should be a part of?
There you go. That's a format that people
can take notes.
Yeah. But while we're still on topic of stories we tell ourselves in our heads, what is your take on myths and legends? When it comes to immigration, as newcomers, getting opportunities, or just in the business world, what are some of the stories that are out there that are quite bonkers, but people still believe them or just stereotype them?
Yeah. So myths for newcomers coming to here to start like businesses and so forth. Yeah. Hey.
Like for example, just starting a business is easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know some people. They just came. They started their business. They're making millions now.
It really is.
I'm sure that's a myth. Okay.
No, I would say some of the things that again, to counter the point that you're saying is that it's difficult to start a business in Saskatchewan. And secondly, I would say that the second myth is that you're on your own.
What is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
Take a minute.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's from my late mother. She would always say, don't envy what people have, because you never know what they're doing to get that.
Oh my
and
God.
it means simply...
I'm writing that one.
Yeah,
it
doesn't mean... Sure. Yeah, it doesn't mean that I'm envious.
Yeah.
It means that what she's trying to say is that you don't know how hard people work for the things that they gain.
Yeah.
You don't know what they have to endure, so don't think it's easy. She's like, basically, walk your own path and understand your own way.
Yeah.
Right? And the other thing I got from my late dad, my dad's advice when he said, don't judge people on the decisions they've made, because you don't know what options or choices they were given. It's basically saying, again, that would, the advice from my mom was, always go below the surface.
Yeah.
Right? Because what you see at the top is a very, very different representation of what's happening beneath. Right? And you know that from when we call people who put on a poker face, right? So some people are putting on a poker face in life, and you're not quite sure. So that's kind of like some of the. And I apply that to anything, like even problem solving as well. It's like, like this is the symptom, but what's beneath that? And then coming from an oil and gas background where we would use like 5 whys and herringbones, all these risks, all these different types of models to like risk hazards and analysis and so on. It's like, we have to go below the surface. We have to find a solution. So it's always going below
the bigger picture.
Never take things at face value. It's often wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like your parents were really smart and wise people.
They went deep.
Yeah, Caribbean people are a bit deep.
We are all like that, okay?
Okay. So, and just to like add more to what you said, my mom has like a Nigerian version of your mom's advice, which is like, if a rich person tells you what it did to be rich, you would rather remain poor. So when you said that came to mind. But anyway, since we're at the end, I want to say thank you a lot for being here and just sharing your journey and sharing advice. And I love how like intricate you were with the advice and breaking it down to steps, right?
Once again, for sharing your story, your experiences, and all this wisdom. I'm very sure that this conversation will bring so much value to our audience and to us as well. So appreciate your time and thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, great. So to our listeners who have spent, I think, almost more than 20 to an hour listening to us today. I want to say a big grateful thank you to you. And if you're a newcomer seeking employment support, you can reach out to us here at the Saskatoon Open Door Society at the Employment Services Units, or you can send us an email at esuregistrations@sods.sk.ca, or you can call our phone number 306-653-4464.
Awesome. That's it.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Stay safe and see you on the next one.
See you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.